After 6 long seasons, the Kirk Cousins era has come to a close, and now we start the J.J. McCarthy era. Kinda, sorta. First, we gotta get through Sam Darnold. So what does 2024 hold in store for the Vikings? Let's go ahead and discuss. What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so, and welcome back to the Deep Dive series where we take a close look at each and every NFL team and we predict what they're going to do in 2024. Next on the agenda is your Minnesota Vikings. But before we get to what may be, let's talk about what was in 2023. It was a typical but not typical season for the Vikings. After going 10-0 in one-score games in 2022, it seemed that their luck had run out as they opened this season with 3 straight one-score losses to the Bucs, Eagles, and Chargers. Minnesota would get its first win of the season versus the Panthers, but would suffer another one-score loss to the Chiefs. But Justin Jefferson would be the biggest loss coming out of that game. Fortunately, he wasn't done for the season. The following week, they managed to scrape by a victory against the Bears, but in Week 7, the Vikings shocked the 49ers. Brian Flores' defense was relentless, and Jordan Addison had his breakout game. Things seemed to be on the up and up for Minnesota, but the following week, Kirk Cousins would suffer a season-ending Achilles injury with only 10 minutes left in their victory over the Packers. They then proceeded to trade for Joshua Dobbs, who was having a career year with the Arizona Cardinals, and he would enter the game against the Falcons after starter Jaren Hall got concussed and lead them to victory, and he would win the following week against the Saints. But things would start to come crumbling down for Dobbs with losses to the Broncos and the Bears. The final straw would be in Week 14 when Dobbs threw a hospital ball to the returning Justin Jefferson. Nick Mullins would come into the game and lead the game-winning drive versus the Raiders. The Vikings would lose their last 4 games of the season, with Nick Mullins making a majority of the starts, and the Vikings would finish 7-10. The defense was better than it had any right to be, finishing 13th in both rush and pass EPA. Alexander Mattison and the run game struggled all year, and the passing efficiency fell off a cliff after Kirk Cousins got hurt, along with their average points scored per game. Real quick, I gotta give a shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I absolutely love Underdog Fantasy because I love football, and now that the football season is far and away, it doesn't mean my betting season has to be, because they do all kinds of sports, whether it's baseball, basketball, esports even. They got you covered, whether that's weekly best ball or my favorite, higher lower on player props. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code BROSHMO, then they will give you a first-time deposit up to $250. That's right. That's right. So if you're gonna go and bet with Underdog Fantasy, use promo code BROSHMO, take advantage of this offer, but please bet responsibly and bet within your means. Biggest story going into the offseason was what they were gonna do with Kirk Cousins, and he ultimately ended up signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Danielle Hunter and DJ Wonnum also ended up leaving via free agency. You also had guys like Alexander Mattison, Jordan Hicks, and KJ Osborne find new teams. But what did they add in the offseason? Well, they were busy little bees as they did bring in, I would say, some significant names, starting with Aaron Jones. The running game sucked last year, and though Ty Chandler had some flashes here and there, they obviously needed another guy back there, and Alexander Mattison was not that guy. So being able to grab Aaron Jones and kind of like stick it to the Packers a little bit was kind of a nice cherry on top, but I'd argue that their biggest free agent acquisition certainly wasn't Sam Darnold, but it was Jonathan Grenard coming from the Texans. It's kind of wild because then Danielle Hunter goes to the Texans. It's almost like a swap. They opted to get a little bit younger, and Grenard's been really solid. Like, his pass rush win rate has been pretty darn good, but some people say the market was a little bit more barren for him because of just he's a guy, he's more of a freelancer. He's someone that wants to get to the passer and isn't maybe the most ideal to keep like gap integrity or play his assignment. So that might lead some teams to be like, yeah, you know what? we want a little bit more discipline in that regard. But the Vikings losing essentially your top 3 pass rushers, because Marcus Davenport, I know he didn't play a big portion of the year. He only had like 100 some snaps, but he was kind of one of their solid free agent signings, because when on the field he was pretty solid, and that's kind of been the case his whole career. So they needed to add some pass rushers. So going out and getting Grenard, I thought was a very nice move, and they weren't done after that, as Stinky and Brian Flores went out and got a familiar face in Andrew Van Ginkel, which you could probably say he had a coming out party this year. It was kind of the breakout season for him, and he was very good as a pass rusher, very productive in that regard. And it's what he could also do in the run game, but also with what they did in the draft, which we'll get to in a second, is making this a very solid pass rush. It's like, yeah, it sucks seeing Danielle Hunter, who's been wonderful for this team for so long. DJ Wonham, who's had his bright spots. Marcus Davenport didn't really make an impact, but when on the field was pretty darn good. And I thought they did a good job replacing those guys. But let's talk about Sam Darnold. The Sam Darnold move kind of showed the Vikings' hand a little bit. I mean, sure, not being able to bring Kirk Cousins back. Yeah, you knew they were going to go out and get a quarterback. Then there was the trade. They ended up making that move with the Texans, where they pick 23. Now they have 2 first-round picks, so everyone and their mom's thinking, okay, they're going to use their 2 first-round picks to move up and go get a quarterback. But that ended up not being the plan completely, and we'll talk about that when we get to their draft class. They bring in Sam Darnold, who I think is an all right backup. In the NFL, he's going to function as a bridge starter for J.J. McCarthy, if we see McCarthy at all next season. So, fun fact, when we get to the offense, Sam Darnold's going to be your starter, which, yeah, that's going to make the projection maybe not where you want it to be. But the Vikings are somewhat in a mini rebuild, as now you have a new franchise quarterback. They also brought in Blake Cashman. If I'm really going to critique what they've done with these free agent signings, like, I like the players. It's just injuries have kind of been a concern for a lot of the guys that they have brought in. Aaron Jones, Jonathan Grenard, he missed 2 games last year, along with, I think 2022, he missed about half the season. You've had Van Ginkel maybe miss a couple, but not as much as these other guys. And Blake Cashman, this is a guy that emerged as a really good player in his 5th year. And it wasn't because, it all started clicking. It was more so he could finally stay healthy. So now you have a little bit of can these guys stay healthy for us? But I do like Blake Cashman quite a bit. Oh, apparently Gojo doesn't. They bring in Jihad Ward as more of a rotation player, and we're talking probably deep in the rotation, probably be the 4th guy. But this is a team that likes the blitz, and I could see them getting a little bit, not interesting, but a little bit crazy with some of the guys that they have on the field. They're really truly gonna try to mix it up. Shaquille Griffin comes in to pad the cornerback room. I do think they could have probably done a little bit better job of maybe trying to bring in some extra talent, but it kind of is what it is. It's neither here or there, because it's like at this point, Andrew Booth just looks like, okay, we've given up on that cat. Caleb Evans, he's gone through growing pains. He was benched a couple of times last season, but I think you're probably going to have him and Griffin contend as your starters there on the outside, along with maybe a name or two that we'll talk about when we get to the defense specifically. Re-signing Jonathan Bullard, solid run defender. So bringing him back and adding Jerry Tillery, who's more of the pass rushing option. I actually kind of like that. Are they high-level starters? Absolutely not. Are they solid rotation players? Yes. And that's the thing when we get to the defense. I'll talk about how it's like, it's meh. It's like you feel like you got a ton of replacement level starters on the defensive interior, but apparently they really wanted to bring in like a Christian Wilkins, and they just kind of missed out on that, unfortunately. Jonah Williams, a very flexible body type. He's someone you can move around the defensive line. He's probably going to function similar to what they at least wanted to utilize Dean Lowry as last season. So I like adding some more depth. I thought that was pretty quality. Trent Sherfield, depth at this point. You kind of already know who your top 3 receivers are. You're just kind of looking for depth. They do bring back Quisenberry, Brandel. They add Dan Feeney. If Dan Feeney's ever on the field for significant snaps, you're in trouble. But he is a backup. That's fine. That's all right. Johnny Munt comes back to the squad. He will just continue to add to that tight end depth. And I kind of like their tight end room. I truly do. Grugier Hill here is a good pickup, I think. Someone who offers huge special teams value. One of the better special teamers in the NFL, but he showed quite a bit what he can do in terms of coverage. If you're going to have him come in, he's not going to be your star linebacker, but he's definitely going to be kind of a sub package option whose biggest thing is special teams, but he can add some value on the defense. He's not just a special teamer. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about what they did via the NFL draft, as they did end up getting J.J. McCarthy. Did they have to trade both first-round picks? They certainly did not. Apparently, they were very adamant they wanted to hold on to pick 23, and that kind of caused them not to be able to move up maybe as far as they wanted to go after, maybe like rumors were like Drake May and such. Regardless, they just kind of sit, they wait. The Falcons, they end up taking Penix, and it gets to 10, and they're like, okay, well, let's just kind of secure the bag here. Let's move up a spot and get our franchise quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. I'll talk a little bit more about him in depth when we get to the offense, but I love it whenever a team is like, you know what, balls to the wall, we're throwing them on the table, we're staying packed, we're not going to overpay for a prospect. If he's there, wonderful. And it ended up really working out for them. They do end up moving up once again for Dallas Turner, added him to this rotation. The first defender wasn't taken until pick 15. So right there at like 17, they were like, okay, Jags, let's do business. Let's go up. We want Dallas Turner. You're adding him to this rotation of Van Ginkel and Grenard, and suddenly you're like, wow. After it looked like, oh, there goes our pass rush. We lost everybody. You've replenished it extremely quickly. Now, they didn't have another pick until the 4th round, early in the 4th round, but they grabbed Kyrie Jackson, who I like quite a bit. And strangely enough, I kind of feel like he fits Brian Flores's more old way of how he coached the defense, or at least what kind of lined up with what he did in Miami. As we'll talk about Flores, what he did last year, and how some of the stuff was a bit radically different than what he has done in the past. But Jackson, I mean, I get it. He's long. He's got some decent speed, like for a bigger corner, 4'5", solid number. But he's someone that wants to be physical, wants to be handsy. I do like the pickup. The 6th round, Walter Rouse, who's really just going to be a backup level player. That's fine. That's a-okay. Does he maybe give you some fringe starter ability somewhere down the line? I don't think it's that high. They do grab a kicker in Will Ricard, which, hey, that's great. That's great. Late day 3. If that's when you want to spend a pick on a punter or a kicker, I'm okay with that. Personally, I don't think the position you should draft it. I think you can find a solid kicker as a UDFA. Some of the best kickers were UDFAs that are currently in the league, but I'm okay with it at this juncture. Michael Juergens, someone who was very productive at center for Wake Forest. grabbing him as a depth piece, I was like, okay, that's fine. I kind of had him as a priority UDFA, so it's okay there in the 7th round. And then Levi Drake Rodriguez, I think I did have a 7th round grade on him coming out of Texas A&M Commerce, a guy who was formerly a edge player, kicked inside full-time to a defensive interior, added the weight. He's up to around like 306 or something, but was very productive and now gives you not only depth, but a good project to work on who can go and get after it. I believe Tillery is just only on a 1-year deal anyway. Let me just go and confirm that. Sorry, don't know it off the top of my head. Yeah, it's a 1-year deal. Perfect. So you're looking a little bit to the future there with Levi Drake. But let's go ahead and talk about this coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell has done a fabulous job with the Minnesota Vikings. As you'll see my grades for the offense and the defense when it comes to coaching. And I have O'Connell with an A+ in terms of passing offense. I like the play calling, I like the play design, and he has done a wonderful job. However, with the run game, it's been a bit rocky. It hasn't been efficient for this squad, and that's something you've noticed some years with Sean McVay. It's either really good, top of the league, or it's like, okay, what happened? What's going on with how we're layering these plays? Like, it just wasn't like productive back in 2022, but then you get to 2023, it's like, okay, wow, Sean McVay is back, baby, with the run game. With O'Connell, I don't think he's caught his stride there quite yet, and hopefully maybe things will change with Aaron Jones, but you only got Aaron Jones for 1 year. We'll see how much that may truly change, but that's why I have him as currently a C grade. If you're unfamiliar with Kevin O'Connell, he was formerly the OC for the Rams under Sean McVay, and then you could even go back further than that, as he was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins under Jake Gruden. So he's got a bit of like the Shanahan influence to him when it comes to like outside zone, wide zone blocking scheme, but someone who likes to incorporate the play action. I guess now that you have a couple of quarterbacks with a little bit of legs, you want to incorporate a little bit more of the bootleg, which you couldn't really do that with Kirk Cousins. This man ain't rolling out. He's not. He's just not. But I expect maybe to see a little bit more of that put into the offense. Wes Phillips is the OC. He's along here for the ride. He was under Kevin O'Connell when he was the OC for the Rams as the tight end coach. Before that, he was actually also with Washington under Jay Gruden and Kevin O'Connell as the tight end coach there as well. If the name doesn't ring a bell, this is Wade Phillips' kiddo, but I guess he's got an affinity for the offense rather than defense like his old man. Regardless, though, this is O'Connell's offense. He's designing the plays, he's making the calls. Wes Phillips is there to kind of just learn and whatnot. But let's talk about this defense, because golly, it's so freaking fascinating. It truly is. What Brian Flores did this past season, I expected it to be blitz heavy. I know, I'm a Dolphins fan. Fins up, baby. I know what he did for my Dolphins, but I also expected it to be very man coverage heavy, and that is not what we got. As a matter of fact, like, we had this blitz rate turned up to freaking 10. Like, I was like, what the hell's going on? This was the only team that was over 50% in blitz rate. To put that in context, there were only 2 other teams that eclipsed 40%. So yeah, this man was blitzing a lot, and which maybe not lends itself to really play a lot of man coverage. Like, if you're that worried about the pass rush, then I think it's more so you're worried about your cornerback room. So you're hiding it with blitzing and just trying to get pressure and maybe force ill-advised throws. We kind of saw that throughout the season, like in the Niners game against Brock Purdy when they were just able to hit home when it came to pressure. But yeah, Flores definitely became more zone heavy. And I don't know if much of that will change. Maybe we'll see a bit more press, but he definitely wanted to get longer and bigger at the corner position, bringing in a guy like Kyrie Jackson in the 4th round there out of Oregon. So that's hella fun. I like that quite a bit. What are we going to expect here? Listen, you got to attack in 3-4, but he's going to show you a lot of different fronts. He'll line up the linebackers in the gaps, like give you a mug front and whatnot. Like he is going to hide where he's bringing the pressure. But quite frankly, he could literally bring it everywhere and be like, you know what? Send the house. Oh man, all these people lined up around the line of scrimmage. I wonder who's going to be the extra blitzers. Oh wait, they all are. So yeah, it's been a hella fun. But Brian Flores has been under the learning tree of guys like Mike Tomlin back in Pittsburgh, where he was at in 2022 as a defensive assistant. He was under Bill Belichick as I think he was a multitude of position coaches for the Patriots. I know he was a linebacker one though in particular. So like, yeah, I like that type of coaching tree. This is a guy that's going to be able to like mix it up. And you know what? Whatever I feel like my defense, in terms of the weapons, the arsenal that I have, how can I make the best use of their talents? He will flip the scheme if he needs to. It just shocked me. A guy like Andrew Booth unable to get on the field. Again, I guess we get to that when we talk the defense. That's neither here or there. But let's do a quick little talk about the rest of this coaching staff. You have Matt Daniels as the special teams coordinator, and then you also have Mike Pettine as the assistant head coach, the outside linebackers coach. So like a quality, honestly, is a super quality group there. I think they have the right coaches in place. Going to a little bit more of the positional coaches here. I think someone to really highlight is Marcus Dixon, who is now the defensive line coach in place of Chris Rumpf, who is now the D-line coach at Clemson, strangely enough. But if you're unfamiliar with Dixon, he was, I guess technically, not under, but he was a position coach with the Rams when O'Connell was over there as the OC. And he was also a position coach the last 2 years with the Denver Broncos. So now he's over here as the D-line coach. So that's going to be, I think, interesting, something to watch out for. Also, best wishes to Chris Rumpf, man. I think he does a stellar job coaching the defensive line. And I'm excited to see what he does there for the Tigers. That's a team that's constantly got talent on the defensive line. You do have Keenan McCardell, who is still here as the wide receiver coach. I love former players who are now coaches. Speaking of which, Josh McCown, things didn't go well in Carolina. He's now over here in Minnesota. Curtis Montkins. It's going to be something to watch out for, man. Can he help turn this run game around? And I mean, to be fair, I don't think Alexander Madison was the guy, or at least the right guy for the job. But for the most part, I'm unfamiliar with a few of these names. Chris O'Hare, that's cool to see him on there. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about this offense. Down below, you're going to see my grades for each position group. And not surprisingly, I have the quarterback group ranked pretty darn low, almost bottom of the league, which, I mean, is fair. You have a rookie quarterback who's probably not going to see the field much at all, who was quarterback 5 in the class in terms of where he ended up going in that order. And he's someone a lot of people assumed JJ McCarthy, yeah, the guy needs a little bit more time in the oven, but there's no denying the tools and the traits, the athletic ability. There's no denying that. But the worst thing you could probably do is put a quarterback in who isn't ready to start and just kill his confidence. And then from that point on, it's just nothing but peaks and valleys, and you're not quite sure what exactly you have. So I do expect Sam Darnold to be the starter for a large part of this season. Doesn't mean we won't see JJ McCarthy, but I don't think we're going to see much of JJ McCarthy. Now, Sam Darnold, in terms of like, is this going to be a guy capable of getting some wins? Yeah, a few, because I do think the other parts of the offense are pretty talented, but it does kind of limit your floor. Is it out of the realm of possibility that Sam Darnold goes scorched earth and does the improbable and can lead this team to the playoffs? I don't think so. I'm just not going to bet for it. Just not. So I think Vikings fans, you kind of understand the position you're in, as it's kind of a mini rebuild. You have your now your franchise quarterback. You're going to try to develop him the right way. And sure, 2024 might kind of be a wash, but now you go into 2025 still having your first round pick and potentially being a high draft pick in what seemingly is a very good defensive class. So, and a good running back class. Not that you're going to use that high first rounder on a running back. Speaking of which, let's talk about running backs. Aaron Jones is here on a one-year deal. Big reason probably why I'm a little bit lower on this running back group is because of the injury concerns with Aaron Jones. Like, don't get it twisted. This dude was on a run last season, or at least had a really good stretch last season where he had 5 100-yard rushing games in the final 7, including the playoffs. The guy is good. Question is, how often will it be on the field? I think, was it a hamstring issue with him last year? I can't recall the top of my head, but if it's like soft tissue, then you kind of worry about his ability to stay on the field. Ty Chandler, I think he's a fine complementary back. Got that long field speed, but he's not exactly a bell cow. And again, if you're going to have a complementary back, you better have backs for him to complement. So Aaron Jones needs to stay healthy. I'll talk about the other parts of the running back room a little bit in a little bit, but I just kind of want to hit on the two volume eaters there in Chandler and Jones. I guess technically maybe a CJ Ham, Ham doing his thing, being one of the few fullbacks still in the league. When it does come from a weapons standpoint, I think this team has some of the best weapons in the league. They just paid Justin Jefferson, rightfully so, one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL. He is a mamma mia that good. He is going to be complemented very well by, well, already has been, by Jordan Addison, who looked fairly solid last season despite being a smaller receiver. Oh, the play strength isn't necessarily great with him. Oh, his tested speed doesn't align with his play speed. Blah, 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 blah. Fun fact, good football player. Great addition to the squad. They also have probably the start of the slot likely will be Brandon Powell, who, when Jefferson went down, you had Osborne on the outside there with Addison, and Powell really stepping up and doing a hell of a job. He might be a little bit undersized, but he gives a little zest. He could be a possession guy. He can win in the intermediate parts of the field as well. So I do like that. I love that wide receiving core. Didn't even touch on TJ Hawkinson, who will be coming back from injury. What was that? It wasn't an ACL. Was it ACL, MCL injury? So hopefully he's able to come back and start the year. I haven't followed up on his timeline the last few weeks. So, fingers crossed, but this is a squad that I think has a competent group at tight end that can fill in. You have Jordan Jefferson, or Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Brandon Powell's really a solid option as well. You have Aaron Jones, who I think is very phenomenal as a pass catcher. So the weapons are very good here. Along with the offensive line, they're returning all their starters. I have them with B grades as both a pass and a run blocking unit. I know the run blocking wasn't exactly ideal last season, but to be fair, you had some of their key contributors on the line miss some games, like Brian O'Neill, Garrett Bradbury, Dalton Reisner, I think was added a few weeks into the season. Well, regardless, Reisner's back. That's kind of huge. The weak link on this offensive line is Ed Ingram. Sorry to say, I think he just hasn't been good. Vikings fans try to fight me on this after his rookie year. They're like, of course he's a rookie, but I think he played pretty darn solid as a rookie. And like, straight up, guys, he's your worst offensive lineman. But if him being like, it's not like he's a terrible offensive lineman, but he has been the weak link there. It's just so apparent, whether it's as a run blocker, whether it's as a pass blocker, which, I mean, he is incredibly, at best, mid at. So the weak link on your line, I think Garrett Bradbury has done a solid job being a very good, in particular, like a run blocker there, but he's done an all right job as a pass protector. Obviously, you have Christian Darrisaw and you have Brian O'Neill, who are just, I would say, they're up there among like the top 7 to 10 offensive tackle tandems in the league. You should probably actually, we could push that to top 5. What am I saying? And then Dalton Reisner, I'm glad that he's back, man. He brings a little bit of stability. He is still an extremely quality offensive guard in the league, and I just, it's kind of weird that he's kind of had a hard time getting holding down, not necessarily holding down a starting job, but people, I guess, a demand for him. There really hasn't been that demand out there for him, which I've always found kind of wild. But let's take a look at the depth when it comes to this squad offensively. Let's reel back to the quarterback. You got Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall there. If they're going to keep a quarterback 3, which, yeah, you're going to have that emergency quarterback. Is it going to be Mullins, the turnover machine? How confident are they in Jaron Hall? It's kind of the question. We didn't get a great look at him. He was concussed when he started, got concussed when he had his first start last season, and then I think he was benched at half in one of the other games. I don't know, man. I don't know. QB3 is going to be a thing to watch out for here in Minnesota. When it comes to the running back room, you have Nwangwu. I can never say his name right. Valuable return man there for the squad. Offers just good special teams ability. And he's really going to stick to the roster because of that. The question is who will make it if they hold on to a running back 4, because keep in mind, this is a team that holds on to a fullback as well. So he could very much, CJ Ham could end up being like a 4th back that they hold on to. But they bring in Myles Gaskins, former Dolphins player. Let's go with that. And Dwayne McBride, who I was shocked ended up being just a 7th rounder. I thought he'd go much earlier, but he was also a guy that just hasn't seen a ton of time. Didn't see a ton of time last season. And I think he ended up being on the practice squad for a little bit, but I don't know, man. It's kind of pick your flavor. If you're looking for the shifty, power-esque back, you're going to go with McBride. Or you go with Gaskins, who's a bit more all-around-esque. When it comes to the wide receiver depth, Jalen Naylor, didn't mention him there. He's going to compete for that wide receiver 4, but he also has good special teams experience. Sherfield always holds down a role, whether it's like with Miami, Buffalo. He always ends up sticking to a squad as a wide receiver 4 or 5. That'll be the same here. The question is, who will be running back 5 if they hold, or running back 5, wide receiver 6 if they hold on to 6. You got Tristan Jackson, formerly Syracuse, back in the day, kind of more of a traitsy guy who just hasn't really been able to hold down a roster spot. Malik Knowles is an interesting thought. He brings special teams experience, but does he lack that size? Maybe a guy like Thayer Thomas, who brings size, could be interesting. You do have some UDFAs here in Deveron Harper, Jay-Sean Jones, who was out of Maryland, I believe, and then Ty James, who was like FCS. Was he the Mercer cat? I can't remember off the top of my head. None of these guys are, I think, real threats to make the roster, but hey, always keep an ear out for training camp, man. Maybe there's always that chance. There's always that chance. Could be 1 in a million, but there's always that chance. Going to the tight end position, again, one of the more, I guess you would say, deep tight end rooms, I think, in the league when we're talking about guys like Josh Oliver, who can he stay healthy? You kind of hope, fingers crossed and whatnot, but he comes in as a very, very solid run blocker for this unit when it comes to him as a pass catcher. He's all right. He's got that ability, but it just hasn't really been showcased a ton. You also have Johnny Munt, who they kind of re-signed. He's going to be in the mix for tight end 3, along with a few of these other guys. They have Robert Tonyan like that's a term, in-house. There, he could push for wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Kind of feel like his time is done. This is a team that has honestly held on to a guy like Nick Muse for quite some time now, at least 2-3 years now. Trying to see, I don't think he had any injury. Yeah, I didn't see him dealing with injury last year, but if you're not familiar, former William & Mary, South Carolina tight end. A guy the team's very familiar with, but hey, what's that in left field? That's N'Keal Harry switching from wide receiver to tight end. So you're telling me there's a chance. They do bring in Trey Knox as a UDFA. Wasn't that high on him. Don't think he has a chance of making the squad. He is a bit underweight. He's more around that like 230 for the position. He's more of a jumbo slot. Samus Reyes, probably a long shot to make the roster as well. He's part of the International Pathway Program. Was he from like Chile or something? I can't remember. But someone who's being developed, but he was initially with Washington. Now he's over here in Minnesota. Maybe someone can unlock him, but I think he's a long shot to make the roster. If I really had to put money on it, I think I'd probably just go with Muse and Monday. I think those would be the guys. Moving to the offensive line. This team did have problems with depth when you had some of the guys go down, but they like Blake Brandel. They bring in Dan Feeney. Whoop-de-doo, kind of said, hey, if he ends up starting, then woof, that sucks. They do have David Quessenberry, Walter Rouse. I don't like the idea of him kind of being a fallback option. If anything, it's going to be Quessenberry who will start if there is an injury at either the guard or either of the tackle spots. As Rouse just kind of develops, I think he's got the potential to be a good backup in the NFL. Don't know about him being like a full-time starter. Tyrese Robinson, couldn't give you much information on him. I don't know if he's seen much playing time. But they do have a couple of interesting UDFAs here. And Henry Bird, this was the Princeton guy from a year ago? Just getting that wrong? No, yeah, he was Princeton. Dude tested out really, really well. So, yeah, man, maybe he ends up making the roster, holding down a guard spot. But Jeremy Flax, impressive size, raw as hell. Don't see him making the squad. Spencer Rowland couldn't give you much info on. Just a guy I didn't come across during the offseason draft process. Doug Nestor is a name. I truly expect, though, Michael Juergens to make a push to make this roster. I truly do. I don't know if you're going to get over Dan Feeney, just kind of has a reputation of being that like 8th or 9th offensive lineman that'll stick on with the squad. So maybe Tyrese Robinson. Maybe that's a name to like watch out for. Maybe if Juergens can make the roster. Keep in mind, Feeney's also a guy that can play guard. So there is that. But at the end of the day, man, I think this offense is going to be kind of mid, and it's going to be held down by the quarterback play, in my opinion. Unfortunately, I feel like that's going to be the case. And you knew this day was coming when Kirk Cousins was going to leave, and you were going to have to figure out a replacement strategy. You knew immediately after that it's not going to be all rainbow and butterflies, but I think regardless, like, it's a step in the right direction, even if this year ends up not being exactly ideal. But let's go ahead. Let's jump to the defense. As I like this defense. There might be aspects I don't love when it comes to this defense, but I like this defense. The pass rush, I gave a B minus, as I do list Andrew Van Ginkel as a starter across from Jonathan Grenard. I think Dallas Turner is going to be worked as a DPR early on, as he maybe develops. This is a guy, he plays with pop, but it's not necessarily like play strength. So maybe as he continues to develop, I think Van Ginkel will be used early on early downs, just because his ability to play the run. And then you move to the inside. Jonathan Bullard, I think he's gonna end up being the lead snap getter. Between him and Tillery is just going to end up being more of the pass rushing option. It's just, again, against the run, it just hasn't been good for him. So it makes sense that Bullard is back here. But Harrison Phillips is all right. Not half bad. Is he anything special? Nah, he ain't. But he is an above average run defender who, in terms of pass rush, is adequate. He truly is. But if we're going to go ahead, let's take a look at the actual depth at the position here for the defensive line. Let's just go ahead and start on the interior. Jonah Williams is a versatile body, so he's going to be very involved in that rotation with Bullard, Phillips, and Tillery. I do think Levi Drake Rodriguez is probably on the outside looking in. There honestly might even be a chance, as he's 7th rounder. He ends up starting out on the practice squad, but they do have Jaquilin Roy, who they drafted a year ago out of LSU, who he's a guy that's seen snaps. You can't deny it. He's a guy who's seen snaps. James Lynch is still around here, former Baylor player. He's in his final year of his contract. So I don't think he'll see the field much, but it's just a bunch of guys. That's why I'm not really high on the interior. And I'm a bit lower in terms of what this team can be as run stuffers. Looking at the edge position, you're going to worry about Grenard and his want to just kind of freelance and freestyle. You got Turner, who is probably going to be more of a rotation option. Again, DPR. I really do like Van Ginkel. 2 years, $20 million is like a phenomenal deal. I think for him, Jihad Ward is kind of on the outside looking in. They're still developing a guy like Andrew Carter II. I don't know if we're going to see more of him, but they did bring in some UDFAs like Gabriel Murphy, who honestly probably is more of an off-ball linebacker with a blitz and upside. I know it sounds a lot like Ivan Pace, but the size is a little bit better than Ivan Pace, but Ivan Pace also had a banger year. What can I say? His rookie season was Mama freaking Mia. Owen Porter, I couldn't really tell you much about off the top of my head. Not too familiar with him in his game. Pat Jones, super mid. Guys, a reserve. Bo Richter, also kind of in a similar mold as Gabriel Murphy, as he's like a little undersized for like to be a true edge rusher, but hasn't really been utilized as like an off-ball linebacker a ton. So don't exactly love what they got going on there, but I do think the pass rush is gonna be solid. It's gonna be pretty darn solid. I mean, also taking into account like Ivan Pace Jr. Hello, my dude. You were hella good last year. Hella good. What he brings as a pass rusher is, I mean, borderline on. He is, I think, a star who is on the rise when it comes to coverage and what he brought as a linebacker. I would say it's good. It was good. He might lack length, but he's a better athlete than I expected, or at least the game comes to him a lot easier than I expected. Blake Cashman also, if he can stay healthy, is plus as a coverage player. So they got linebackers that can sit there in coverage. I mean, remember I also mentioned Gruger Hill, who not just special teamer, but he gives them some splash plays in pass coverage when it comes to this linebacker group as run defenders. I would say I think Cashman did a really good job, but again, man, can he stay healthy? I'm a little scared about that. So maybe like the run defense is a little bit better than a little bit better than I'm actually giving it credit for. But I think a C+ is a fine grade. The pass rush, I feel like could have been a little bit better than I gave it credit for. Maybe closer to B, maybe even borderline B+. But again, we kind of got to see how Dallas Turner plays his rookie year. When it comes to this coverage unit, that's where I'm out. That's kind of where I'm out right now. Like, I love the safety group. Don't get me wrong, man. Like they play 3 safety sets. Don't get it twisted. Like Josh Metlis is a guy that will kick in the slot. He truly will. He had over 1,000 snaps last year. All 3 of these safeties had over 1,000 snaps. Like Harrison Smith, he's no longer elite anymore, but he's still good in the box doing his job. Cameron Bynum, he's been coming up with splash plays and coverage. I really love the safety group. It's the cornerback room I'm just so unsure of. Like, you got Byron Murphy, who technically can work inside and out, and I mean, color me surprised. I was surprised that the Vikings signed him. I was like, man, but Flores is such a man-heavy coverage scheme, and lo and behold, they are zone-heavy now. So I think the signing of Byron Murphy makes a little bit more sense. Not to crap on Byron Murphy as a man coverage player. I don't think he's a bad coverage player in man. It's just he's got some size restrictions, you know. And then I have a Caleb Evans listed as the other starter. Kind of a toss-up for me. If you were asking who I hope will be the starter, it's Mekhi Blackmon. Like, straight up. I want to see him start more. He had a lot of good games last year. He truly did. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the other guys that can be competing here. As it's, you got Shaq Griffin. I think he's probably best utilized as a reserve or rotation. I'd rather see more of what you got in Blackmon and Evans than Shaquille Griffin at this juncture. Also, you have Kyrie Jackson. Don't count this guy out. I think he's one of the more pro-ready guys, and he is an older prospect. So he's gonna be in the run-in for starting snaps. But let's not pretend you don't have a superstar. I don't even know if you really have an above-average player quite yet. Like, the jury's kind of still out on it. Like, Byron Murphy is probably your most... the player I'm most confident in knowing what he is. And I think when it comes to the coverage unit, like, he's their best player. He's their best corner, I should say that. Because, again, that safety room. They'd be kind of good, but we'll see. They do get aided by that safety group. They have Jay Ward and Theo Jackson as backup safeties here with Lewis Cine. If he ends up getting cut this offseason, that's going to be wild. Like that 2022 draft, at least those first 2 picks, you're not feeling good. First 3, dude, Brian Asamoah has really done not much of anything either. We'll talk about that when we get to the linebacker depth, but golly, it does not feel good blowing that. Jay Ward, he has the flexibility to play in the slot. He's got a very versatile body type, so absolutely this cat makes the roster. Got Najee Thompson, Jalen Williams. I think they're just kind of names in there. I believe Jalen Williams, was he the Villanova guy? I'm actually fairly certain he wasn't Villanova. It was Indiana. There we go, Indiana. Probably long shots to make the roster. Probably. Dwight McGlothern, probably a long shot to make the roster, which kind of sucks, man. I really like Dwight McGlothern. I was a big fan of his. I think ultimately I had like a 5th or 6th round grade on him just because the explosive stuff wasn't good for him. But he's come into I think a perfect defense where it's like there's press and it's zone heavy. That's exactly what I thought he should be when it came to his projection into the NFL. AJ Green, the third, still bouncing around the league here a little bit. I feel like he's been everywhere. San Fran, Cleveland. You do you, baby boo. But yeah, I just got big questions. The safety unit, I'm fairly confident. It's a good unit. I ain't worried. It's a good unit. But unfortunately, this cornerback room, it leaves much to be desired. Linebacker room, you're working with Ivan Pace Jr., Blake Cashman. If Cashman can stay healthy, I think you have potentially a really good linebacker duo right there, along with Kamu Gruger Hill, Brian Asamoah on the outside looking in. I got my fingers crossed. I was a big Dallas Gant fan coming out of Toledo. You're like, oh, well, that's a small school. He was a former Ohio State guy. Played 4 years with Ohio State before transferring to Toledo, which was his parents' alma mater. So connected some dots there. The guy has got some length. He's got some speed to him. And he's got a lot of, like, the special teams ability. I think that's kind of huge. I think he makes the roster because of that. I'm not too familiar with Abram Beauplan or KJ Cloud. But those guys are probably long shots to make the roster anyway, unless they offer a little bit in terms of special teams. But at the end of the day, man, I don't have like a great feeling about this defense. I think it's mid. I don't think the offense can do enough to alleviate some of the pressure from the defense. I think it's going to fall on Brian Flores again, to where it's like, hey, let's try to create short fields for our offense, whether that's causing 3 and outs, putting pressure on the quarterback, and forcing some mistakes. We'll see. I have a lot of faith in Brian Flores. I'm a big fan of his. So this is the reason you're here. You want to know how your team is going to do in the 2024 season. We've already talked about the coaching staff, the roster, some of the moves they've made. And unfortunately, I think the Vikings have one of the harder schedules in the league. I currently have them with the 28th, or in other terms, it's like the 5th hardest schedule in the league. So not exactly ideal. We could talk about the ceiling. Maybe, I don't know, Sam Darnold does a solid job. Or maybe Jaden McCarthy ends up being an earlier starter than what we anticipated. And let's say maybe he has like a Will Levis-esque year, which there were some peaks and valleys there. But to be fair, Will Levis, his offensive line was dog water. This is actually a pretty competent offensive line. I may not love all the pieces, but it's very competent with an all-star there in Darisaw. So let's talk about their ceiling first. Let's say, like, I don't think Giants are that good. So I think this is within the realm of possibility. Maybe they could surprise a team like the Niners or the Texans. So let's say they get one out there. I do think they're going to beat the Packers once, probably more so, maybe closer to home. They do have an early bye. Let's say maybe an Aaron Rodgers is hurt there. But it's Tyrod Taylor. He's actually pretty solid. So I'm actually going to take that one back. Coming off the bye, you got a home game. You got the Lions. I think that's winnable there. You can make a case for the Rams, but I think the Rams are pretty darn good, along with the Colts. But let's say you sneak one of these from, I mean, I think you could beat the Titans. Maybe you sneak one of these out. So let's, I'm actually going to go with the home game instead. Let's give one to the Cardinals, one to the Bears. I'm going to give this one here. Let's say Seahawks 2. So we're looking at a ceiling of, did I give a loss on accident? Oh, I did. There we go. Of probably 9 wins. And that sounds fair. And I think that's your probably your absolute ceiling. I think you're probably going to be closer to 6 wins. Matter of fact, my prediction is 5-12 when it comes to this Vikings team. I think it's good enough to sneak some wins, especially in division. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be 3-3 inside the division, but I do think 2-4 is within reach when it comes to the squad. So there are other games that could sneak out there, like maybe let's say they go 2-4 in the division, maybe they sneak a game against 1 or 2 of the AFC South. You also have the Cardinals and the Seahawks and the Bears, which I think are winnable games, truly. So yeah, I think 5 wins is probably a good safe call. Again, unless like Sam Darnold goes scorched earth or JJ McCarthy ends up being a hell of a lot more prepared than we expected him to be. I think mine is more of a conservative call rather than kind of banking on something that's probably not likely to happen, but isn't out of the realm of possibility. Again, but you let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you want to check out more of my deep dives, I'll leave a playlist right down here, along with, hey, I'm doing my summer scouting for the 2025 NFL draft. If you want a good watch list going into the 2024 college football season, I got you covered. You can check out those videos down there, as well as, hey, fun fact, you can get early access to some of these videos via podcast. If you want to check out those, check out the links in the description. But as always, until next time, be easy, my friends. Later.